Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we are going to show you our very first canning experience with our brand new All American canner. Stay tuned to see if it was a success or a failure canning our first set of canned beans.
We started with measuring out our dry beans. So the four type of beans that we utilized were black beans, pinto beans, chickpeas, and then red kidney beans. So that was them dry. Then we filled the containers, the four separate containers with the four separate beans. We filled them with a good amount of water, knowing that they would absorb that water overnight. So definitely fill the containers. Made sure they were a nice large container. Got out any not so good looking ones that were floating on the top. And then here they are the following day where they set overnight, absorb the water. This probably one of the first places we got maybe overconfident. We thought that the beans at this point had absorbed all the water they were going to, which we learned later on that was not the case. Then we, of course, needed to test our canner. So we did do a run through, filling the All American canner with about 1.5 inches of water. So we made sure to fill that first so that we could do a run through. For the lid, we did have to make sure we rubbed the rim with oil before we placed it on. Lined up the little arrow that was on the lid with the little line on the canner body itself, and then sealed it up. And making sure that as we did the seals, we did the opposite ends. And then the canner did come to pressure. Once the canner was tested, then we started putting the soaked beans into jars. So we were filling them up, starting here with the chickpeas, leaving, I don't know, like 1 or 2 inches from the top of each of the jars, the kind of classic ball jars. Again, this is where we made our first real error, was we filled these cans way too full. So again, because we soaked them overnight, our assumption was that they had absorbed all the water they were going to absorb. That was not the case. So you'll see the final product when we get to it, but we definitely not fill the cans as high. So like we've watched people that have done like dry beans, and yeah, they only fill them halfway, but that's because in our mind it was because the beans are going to soak in the jars, but they absorbed more water. So we thought by soaking them that they would be fine, but they were not. So we put salt in all of them. And then for a couple of them, some of the pinto and some of the black beans, just 2 each, we added some additional spices like garlic powder, a little onion flakes, and some cumin, because our thought was like refried beans and tacos and things like that. So here's all the beans with their 1/2 teaspoon, I believe it was, of salt. And then we added the water. So we filled the cans, again, or the jars, way too full. This part we did correct was we cleaned the rim. So just some regular vinegar, just did a quick swipe on each of the top of the jars, and then put the lids on ever so, just so that they just turned kind of one knob, one little spin, and that was as tight as we got them. And then started placing them. Also, not that it was a mistake here, but the canner says the instruction says they fit way more jars than we actually were able to put in. I think I was just too paranoid about them being like too close together, like what if one explodes, and just being extra cautious. So we could have technically, according to the instructions, fit more in, but didn't. It was fine. In this case, it didn't like cause any issues or anything. Nothing exploded or anything like that. There was no, spoiler alert, there were no big fails, just more learnings. So here we are putting the can back on with the actual jars inside the canner. And again, the hardest part, I think, was getting the lid lined up and making sure it was like spaced all the way around correctly and tight enough. That's going to take some practice for sure, me getting comfortable, because when I watch like other people do YouTube videos, they're like, oh, they just pop it on and it's done. But it took multiple tries. It's not as easy as people make it look on YouTube. And then it was done. So it took way longer than I realized it was going to take. We did this on New Year's Eve because, I mean, how else? I mean, we're party animals, us millennials, spending our New Year's Eve canning beans. Because why not? So this was well after midnight on the 1st, taking the cans or the jars out. And then this is again where we realized, oh crap, the beans have expanded and absorbed way more water than we realized. Again, not that it was a total fail, it was a partial fail, but and this is them the next day where again the beans have expanded even more, filling up the jars even more, absorbing even more water, and realizing that yeah, we're gonna have to use these beans. They're not gonna be shelf stable. We're gonna have to put them in the refrigerator and use them much quicker than we had originally intended.
Alrighty, so there was our very first canning experience. Not a total failure, but a lot of learning. So we'll definitely be canning beans and other things again in the future. Obviously, our biggest learning this time was we just really overfilled the cans. They were still edible, so we've been eating on them. Some of the recipes we made were obviously we made some refried beans with the pinto beans, hummus with the garbanzo beans, the chickpeas, the black beans. We made into some tacos. So still working through. We have a fridge literally like full of beans. Biggest thing is we are still having to cook them a little bit because they didn't like fully cook. So we're having to cook them a little bit before we are actually able to use them. Slowly working through it. Gave some to my mom. A big part of this whole canning experiences because I do want to be able to share my food with my family. I want to be able to share some with my community, with community kitchens and things like that, to be able to feed families in my community and help contribute as much as I can. Wasn't a complete failure, not a complete success, somewhere in between, but had lots of learnings. We're going to be doing some more canning hopefully this next week, and there's going to be a lot more to come. So definitely like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, check back next week, and hope to see you then.